want to talk about a particular implementation of the point class that's really nasty. Here is my main function. I'm creating a rectangle. I'm creating a point object. I'm going to write a function, or I actually already have a function, that prints the point out if I pass the point in as an argument. I also want to print the point out using the stream insertion operator, and we saw earlier how we do that. The issue here is if I go to the top, what I have is a really, really weird implementation of the point class. And for the sake of this contrived exercise, I am not allowed to modify the things that make it so obnoxious. My goal is to make the code compile and run without adding any member functions to the point class or making any of the members that aren't currently public. Now let's try compiling in the spirit of torturing the compiler. And we can see it seems to be having a bit of trouble. So declared private. It's complaining a lot about things being private that I'm trying to use in a context where that's not allowed. Before I go further, here are a bunch of declarations of the various parts of the program. We might call these forward declarations. You should be familiar already with function declarations. If I want to tell the compiler that a function exists before I'm ready to actually write the function, I can give a function declaration. I can do the same thing for an operator. I can do the same thing for a class. If I want to use the name of a class before I've written the class, I just say class point. That's a hint to the compiler, don't worry about it, I'm going to use this name point, it's a class, I'll define it eventually. So here are declarations of various things in this program. Okay, so then here's my point class, and here's what makes it so obnoxious. I can create points with x and y coordinates, but for some reason I'm not allowed to even look at x and y after that. X and y are private, and there are no get functions. I have no way of getting the x or y coordinate after the point has been created. Hopefully, and I've chosen the example deliberately to show this off, hopefully you agree this is a stupid idea and I should not write this point class ever. The feature I'm going to introduce today is not a good feature to use to solve this problem, really. Really, you should write a better point class. This is a stupid point class. More stupidity is not going to solve this problem. It turns out that the feature I want to introduce is only very rarely actually that useful. In most cases, if you think you need it, you actually need to write the code in a different way. Therefore, for the example where I show the feature off, I want to use a ridiculous example so you don't get the idea this feature is sort of, a catch-all way of solving an access control problem. In any case, the exercise, the contrived exercise for the video is, without making these public or adding functions to get x and y, how can I make the code compile? Okay, let's look at why the code doesn't compile. Well, it doesn't compile because the print point function, which is not in the class, wants to access the member x and the member y. They are private. Nobody's allowed to see them outside of the class. This stream insertion operator wants to access the member x and the member y, but they're private. It can't access them. And then finally, the rectangle object, okay, so it can call the constructors to set the x and y coordinates, but it does still need the x and y coordinates for things like computing the width and height. The rectangle class needs access to the private member data of the point class. So what do we do? Well, obviously, again, the correct solution for this example is add some mechanism for people to get x and y coordinates out of the point class. But suppose we're not allowed to do that. Suppose for some reason I want x and y to be fully private in the point class with three exceptions. I want print point to be able to see them, I want this operator to be able to see them, and I want the rectangle class to see them, and that's it. Everybody else has to, they have to be encapsulated from everybody else, they have to be fully private, except for these three parts of the program. For some reason, these three parts of the program get an exception to that rule. They've gotten so close and chummy with the point class that they get an exception. I guess they've gotten to know each other in, I don't know, it's been, 10 different videos now. We've had points and rectangles and operators. They've gotten to know each other sitting in the green room between videos, and they've all become friends, and now they want to have private member access, even though these members are supposed to still be private to the outside world. But fortunately for us, C++ actually understands the power of friendship. And we are allowed, although we shouldn't make a habit of doing this, we should be careful who we make our friends. We should keep our friends close and whatever. We can do this, but it's not usually the best idea, but it's available to us because the language provides us every tool available. We are allowed to say that some parts of our program get an exception to the rules. So, for example, I can say, hey, the rectangle class, it's my friend. It is allowed to look at the private data in this class, even though it's not part of this class. And I do that by first getting a declaration of the thing I'm talking about. So here's a declaration of the class rectangle. I mentioned that earlier. There's a declaration of the class rectangle. I get a declaration, I put it inside of the point class, and I put the word friend in front of it. Now, the rectangle object is a friend of the point class, and as one of its friends, it is allowed to access data that would otherwise be private. That is what friends are for. And it is key to understand here that the point class gets to decide who its friends are. Rectangle is not allowed to barge through the door and tell the point class that it's its friend. Only the point class can decide who its friends are. And you can see that's why the friend directive is inside of the point class. Okay, what other friends has the point class made over this sequence of videos? Well, let's see. It's made friends with the print point function. So if I want to make friends with a function, I write the function signature, a declaration of the function, and then I write the word friend in front of it. In this case, it happens that the friend directives are inside the private section. It actually makes no difference. I can put them anywhere I want as long as they're inside the class definition. And then finally, I don't know, a bit of a newcomer here to the party, but I've got this operator. And I guess the point class is being so friendly today, it wants to make friends with the operator. So in this case, I get a declaration of the operator. That would be the function signature, in a sense, for the operator. And I write the word friend before it. And so the members X and Y are still private. The outside world is still not allowed to use X and Y. But anybody who happens to be a friend of the point class is. So I try compiling this, and all of those compile errors are gone. And hopefully you can observe, in this video, I didn't change anything except adding these 3 friend directives. And so with the ability to make friends, you do have the ability to add, I guess, one-time exceptions to the usual access control. You can give your friends access to private data. To be very careful about that, though, because usually we have private data for a reason. You don't want to make just anybody your friend because, in a sense, that defeats the purpose of making the data private. But there are occasionally cases where you have some access control snarl where you want something to be private, and, for example, you have an operator like this one that isn't allowed to live inside the class, because you could argue that if you want print point to have private member access, make it a class member. But you can't make this operator a member of the class. We saw in a previous video, the only time you can make an operator a member of a class is if it's a member of the class that goes with the left-hand operand. So there's no way I could make this operator a member of the point class. But if it needs access to private data, what do I do? Well, that is what friends are for.